Good morning. You're listening to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Dave McClatchy, a vice president with Armstrong. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to speak with you, Kemp.
You did a heartfelt post on LinkedIn, caught my eye. I thought it'd be a good time to talk a little bit. Major changes going on. Armstrong has been purchased through bankruptcy court, and AHF Products is taking part of the North American assets. They're bringing them over, so it's kind of an end of an era for Armstrong. I thought it'd be interesting, since you have such a legacy there, to talk about Armstrong and what it's meant to so many people. Looks like you spent the last 16 years at Armstrong focused on buying groups and residential distribution. You're based out of Charlotte. You spent 9 years at Pergo, but you started right out of college and went into the Armstrong training program. Tell me a little bit about that, because it used to be, back in those days, it was either Milliken or Armstrong, and they had quite a dormitory up there at what they called the Manor. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Armstrong was very big in recruiting on campuses at the time. I was interviewed on campus at Virginia Tech, had other companies that had training, but even then, back in 1990, Armstrong was known as one of the best training programs. When they made the offer, I accepted it and moved up to Lancaster. And you're right, there was a facility called the Manor, which was a two-story dormitory built off an old farmhouse. At that time, there were both flooring and ceiling sales and marketing trainees. And you went through from June to September to get trained on the products and the channels.
Yeah, so for a young, talented person in college going to Virginia Tech, you're looking at your first chapter career-wise. And I guess one of the incentives was this fantastic training program, right?
Yeah, I looked at a lot of other consumer products companies at the time, and it just seemed a great program. And obviously you spent a lot of time there. And the one thing that they said is, we're going to teach you about the industry and the different channels. Doesn't matter really what your background was and what your degree was. We'll teach you the Armstrong way. Definitely at the back end of that, you knew a lot and learned a lot, and were ready to get out there into the market and apply everything that you had learned in those couple of months.
Just think of all the people in the industry that went through that program. You know, we track revenue per year on companies. And last year, even though, it's been 4 years, Armstrong has been operating at a loss, but last year they were still almost $500 million in sales. It's well over $1 billion at one time, right?
Yeah, when we split away from Armstrong World and became Armstrong Flooring, we were at over $1 billion at that time. I think where we got smaller, obviously, was when we separated and the wood division was sold off, which became AHF.
And so the good news for you is that, I guess, this Friday there's a kind of the end of an era. And all of the employees of Armstrong are either unemployed, or some of them would be going over to AHF. And for you, good news, you're going to AHF, right?
That's correct.
And AHF, interestingly enough, they were the only strategic bidder. And if they hadn't been there, it would have been curtains completely for the plant. Granted, they're not taking the whole thing, but they're taking the parts that Brian Carson thinks he can operate at a profit, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was well covered in all, the announcements that were out there. Being a publicly traded company, there were no secrets as to what was going on in the process. With the end being that AHF has purchased the Armstrong brand, they will continue with the Armstrong brand and bring over production from factories that are remaining, but also fill in the portfolio over time with some of the other categories that Armstrong had abandoned over the last couple of years.
Let me just ask you, you got a role at AHF. This is kind of forward-looking. If you look at what, our estimate just on their hardwood business last year was it was over $300 million. I don't know the value of what AHF has acquired from Armstrong, but this company has the potential of being a $700 or $800 million company now, don't you think?
Yeah, as I went through the interview process, I think the goal rapidly, approaching after this change is to get to $1 billion. I think that's realistic. Hey, I'm happy to be a part of that process.
That'd be back in the top 5 players.
Yeah, a lot of growth and obviously just a lot of talent over there. I know a lot of the people that are over there from my time with Armstrong that went over with hardwood, and you have a lot of people that were at Armstrong, went to other companies and came back. It's a good fit. Most people have had some time with Armstrong that are over there.
If you look at the leaders in the business right now, currently, it's Mohawk and Shaw at the very top. And if you look back at where Armstrong was at one time, they owned Evans and Black, they owned American Olean. They clearly could have jumped way ahead. It's interesting to give a historic perspective on all this, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know at my time since I've been back, just talking with Armstrong people, hey, the history of Armstrong is, there's a lot of examples there of what could have happened if. because we sold off ceramic, we sold off carpet, and the two big competitors that are out there are multifaceted now. Many of them buying some of the assets that we actually had. So it does make you wonder, but so is the history.
Yeah. When I bought Floor Focus in the hardwood business, it was Armstrong and the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, they were 700 million, and the next closest guy was 100. But one of the issues I think recently with Armstrong has been whether you're going direct or whether you're going through distribution. And I know you've got a history, obviously, with Pergo of working through distribution. Do you think the distributors and the direct customers will get behind AHF and help them?
I think so. I will start with AHF next week to get a better understanding, but they've continued to support distribution out there in the marketplace. They've grown their business in the last year with distributors, in many cases with some of the distributors moving over because of what was happening with Armstrong going direct. So I think they're fully behind distribution. If anything, I think they have more distributors than what Armstrong had. As far as the strategy on that, I don't see that changing that much.
Yeah, I know some of the Bravo group, which was that core Armstrong distributor group, has gone to Tarkett. So it'll be interesting to watch all that. What's your new role at AHF?
I will be focused strictly on Armstrong, and I'll be working with our distributor partners.
Is that a residential focus?
Yes, just residential focus, commercial, different division, so to speak, at AHF and different leadership. But they're, obviously putting their game plan together very similarly to what I've been, tasked to do with over here on the residential side.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks for spending time with us and telling us this transition that's going on this Friday. Again, been talking to Dave McClatchy, a new executive with AHF Products, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.